All right, perfect. So let me introduce all of our speakers today for this briefing on Mayor Harrell's 2026 budget proposal. So we'll hear from Dan Eater, who's director of the City of Seattle's Budget Office, Tyler Pichette, who is a senior associate at Pacific Public Affairs, and the Chamber's own Lars Erickson, who's our senior VP of Public Affairs and Communications. So, thank everyone for joining us today. Earlier this year, the Office of Economic Forecast and Revenue predicted a $247 million deficit for the city of Seattle in 2026. So, I know our members are eager to hear more from all of our speakers today about Mayor Harrell's budget proposal and approach for 2026. Our first speaker will be Dan Eater, who's going to dive right into the top lines from Mayor Harrell's budget proposal, starting with how they were able to balance the budget for 2026, and then pivoting to investments on issues that chamber members care about, like affordable housing and homelessness, public safety, support for small businesses, and how his office plans to address potential gaps in federal funding for the next fiscal year. So, Dan, please join me on screen and we'll click into your slides.
Great. Thank you, Lee, for the introduction, and thanks for the opportunity to be here and talk to you about the mayor's proposed budget. I'm Dan Eater, Budget Director at the City of Seattle. I think we can skip ahead in the interest of time to slide 4. I am just giving people a sense that while we did have some turmoil in terms of revenue forecasts, we are legally required to adopt a balanced budget. The mayor took that seriously and proposed a balanced budget. This is the second year of a 2-year budget cycle. We started with what we call an endorsed budget for 2026. That was based on last year's revenue forecast. It set a starting place, a spending plan for 2026. But as you'll hear in upcoming slides, we did not have enough money to spend money. We didn't have enough revenues to spend according to that plan. So we had to make some changes. We can go to the next slide, please. This slide just gives you a sense that we budget all year round and have departments working on proposals in the springtime. We have the summertime to review and accept portions and reject portions of those proposals, and ultimately get to a proposed budget. September 23rd is when we made our budget transmittal. That started the council's review process. They'll go for all of October and November, arriving at a adopted budget by Thanksgiving is the game plan. We can go to the next slide. In fact, let's just skip forward to slide. You have different numbering than I do. Slide 7 is what I'm looking at. You have slide. This will do. As Lee mentioned, in April, well, I'll start with the beginning. We had a balanced endorsed budget. When we started the year, we were expecting to be able to support all of the planned spending. And then in April, we got a terrible news, which is that we were about $240+ million shy of anticipated revenues for 25 and 26 combined. The general fund and the payroll expense tax fund are the two most flexible sources of revenue that support all kinds of general fund governmental purposes. The combined deficit there was $217 million out of the $240 million. So the next slide shows how we are going to address. Sorry, if you could go back a couple of slides. Thank you. These are the strategies we used to address that April revenue forecast news that we were effectively $217 million in the hole for 25 and 26. If the strategies fall into three broad categories: spending reductions, new revenues, and a revised forecast. We were in control of the first two. The third one, the revised forecast, effectively happened to us, so I'll get to that. The first thing we did when we found out we had $200+ million of smaller expected revenue for the general fund and the PET is we slowed spending in those areas. We had already started this slowing of spending in 2024 when we were looking at another expected deficit. So we achieved some significant savings in 2024 by having a hiring freeze, travel and training freeze, technology freeze, acquiring new technology, and spending on new contracts and projects. We continue that in 2025. And then in 2026, we asked for departments to make proposals for how to slow down spending compared to the endorsed budget, that spending plan I was referring to earlier. New revenues, I think you will already have heard that the mayor has proposed a package of changes to the business and occupation tax. It's branded as the Seattle Shield Initiative. That refers to the part of the game plan is to have those revenues help the city backfill some of the spending that the federal government was doing to benefit the city of Seattle, state of Washington, and the nation. We can do only a small part of backfill, but we can do more with the B&O tax changes, which will yield a net $81 million of additional B&O tax revenue, while providing a reduction or eliminating altogether the B&O tax bill for about 90% of businesses that currently pay the B&O tax. If there are questions about that later, I'm happy to address it. The other new revenue which the mayor has proposed is an increment on top of the current sales tax. That's being branded the public safety sales tax. It'll generate about $39 million, which has, by state law requirements, has to be used for some range of public safety investments. And that's what we're planning on doing in the proposed budget. And then finally, the thing that happened to us was that we got some better news in August. The April forecast, as I mentioned, was down $217 million. In the revised forecast in August, that came back $95 million to the good, but since the 217 number is considerably bigger than the $95 million of relatively good news, we found ourselves still underwater by $122 million compared to the endorsed budget's assumption of the revenue picture. That's 217 minus 217 plus 95 leaves us still 122 million in the hole, if you will. So if we can skip forward, please, to 2 slides. Just high-level look at the budget. Next several slides just give you the 30,000 foot view, and then I'll dive into a few highlights that I think will be of interest. So the mayor's proposed 2026 budget continues. Every year he has made increases in affordable housing and EDI, or Equitable Development Initiative, project investments. Both of these are top level importance to the mayor, and he's continued to make investments in this area. I'll have a little more information on both of these. Revenue Stabilization Fund and Emergency Fund. These are our two main general fund reserves in case of an earthquake, tsunami, etc., or a dramatic decrease in revenues. We managed to balance the budget without touching either of these funds, so they're made whole according to the levels called out in the Seattle Municipal Code. We also began to restore funding in the payroll expense tax reserve. That's something which the mayor had funded, but got depleted in the last budget cycle. This year, the mayor made an investment to begin to restore that reserve that can be used to address some of the volatility as we've seen in the last two revenue forecasts. The mayor did this all without new layoffs in the proposed budget, although there are a number of positions that were funded but vacant that have been eliminated in the mayor's proposed budget. We can go to the next slide, please. So this is a pie chart showing the entire city budget. It's nearly $9 billion with a B. About half of that is for utilities, transportation, investments, also Office of Environment Sustainability. Utilities and transportation are the vast majority of this biggest chunk of the pie chart, and they are almost exclusively funded with revenues that have to be used only for utilities or transportation purposes by state law. And then you can just see how the rest of the city's spending happens. If we can go to the next slide, please. For some reason, this is not showing the way it is on my screen. Apologize. I think we just skipped forward. This was a look at the general fund budget, which I'll just tell you is $2 billion out of that roughly $9 billion, and half of which is for public safety, fire, police, and the new care team, which is civilian social workers who respond alongside police. This slide is looking at the general fund and showing in the green line how the expenditures have changed over time. You can see that, the bars below are the revenues that make up the general fund. The point here is twofold. Yes, the general fund has grown over time. Yes, we have managed every year because we are required to get spending in balance with reasonably anticipated revenues. That was true as well in past years as in this year, the 2026 proposed budget, second from your right. It is not yet, we are not yet in 2027, but we are projecting that the revenues will not grow as fast as our expected spending. So we anticipate beginning in 2027 to have a significant deficit again. Legally, we will be required to come back into balance. So we will either have to have better news from a future revenue forecast or some other changes, either yet more new revenues come in the door from one stripe or another. We are continuing to lobby for changes to the property tax lid that has been in place for a couple of decades now, limiting our growth in property tax to 1% plus the value of new construction. Or we'll have to reduce that would take a change in state law. Or we'll have to reduce spending below the level that we are currently anticipating for 2027. So with that, I'll ask Lee to please skip forward to the next slide. So this is highlighting some of the key priorities in the mayor's proposed budget. I can do this relatively quickly and then return back to any questions that you have. We can review these slides. But the main categories are affordability, public safety, reducing homelessness. Those are the three spending categories. And then we also have federal response. I'll show you how a portion of the business and occupation tax changes would be spent, the net revenue that flows from those changes, assuming that voters approve that measure in November. So we can go to the next slide, please. So the first of these categories is affordability. The mayor, as I mentioned, is continuing record levels of investment in affordable housing. Total is $350 million. This includes $325 million in a variety of areas that the Office of Housing typically invests, including but not limited to multifamily capital development. This is investments that the city makes in new construction of new affordable housing. We've broken out $5 million separately because that's happening through a transfer outside of the Office of Housing for some technical reasons that aren't that interesting, frankly, but for a separate project up at Northgate. And then the mayor has announced an $80 million 4-year investment in an anti-displacement and reparations housing fund. The first of those 4 years would be in 2026. So that would be a $20 million investment coming from the Office of Housing's $350 million. And basically that allows the city to make race-based, race-conscious investments to help address the redlining and other governmental past policies that have harmed Black people. We can move to the next slide, please. This shows, I mentioned it was a record level of investment at $350 million in the proposed budget for affordable housing. This gives you a sense of what the history of our investment has been in this area, going back about approximately 10 years to 2015, 2016 timeframe, where we were in the low $50 million range of total investment. We are now many times higher than that at about 350 million. So there's been just a dramatic, both a recognition of the need and a dramatic level of investment to help address that need. Go to the next slide, please. So continuing in terms of affordable housing, the Equitable Development Initiative investments, these are investments in community organizations intended to stop displacement, particularly of people of color in neighborhoods throughout Seattle. That's a $29.5 million investment. There's $18.5 million of a variety of childcare related investments. And that would flow in the event that voters approve a renewal of the Families Education Preschool and Promise Levy. That's also on the November ballot. There is a Back to Business Fund expansion. Some of you may be aware of a program that has been on the books in Seattle, the Storefront Repair Fund, for several years. This would increase that $800,000 pot of money, which was a year-by-year investment, which is to say it wasn't ongoing. It's now turned into a multi-year investment of $5 million over 2 years. It's a surge. So we're with the $2.5 million in 2026, plus the $800,000 in the endorsed budget, we are now up to $3.3 million for what was formerly referred to as the Storefront Repair Fund. And if we can go to the next slide, please. We're making a $11.5+ million investment in increasing wages for human services contractor employees. These aren't city employees, but these are contractors who work for the city. And this would give them a 4.6% increase in their wages. Part of that 2.6% is required by law because it's tied to inflation. And then we're increasing that all the way up to 4.6 for a market rate increase, understanding that these are workers who do important human services work at relatively low pays with high turnover. And then we're making some investments in addressing food deserts, expansion of farmers market in Lake City, in part in response to the announcement that Fred Meyer, there one of two grocery stores, would be closing, and a $700,000 pilot to incentivize small businesses to open stores, bodegas, and other businesses offering foods of a variety of kinds in neighborhoods. And this is essentially a follow-up to the comprehensive plan allowing for what we had proposed as corner stores, and the city council has expanded to be stores in more generally in neighborhood residential areas. There'll be more on food later. If we can go to the next slide, please. Public safety, $39 million, as I mentioned, would flow from a public safety sales tax. This is councilmanic, which is to say it doesn't go to the voters. The city council has a bill that they are considering that the mayor's transmitted. If they approve it, we would have $39 million going into the mayor's proposed budget as a new revenue. The lion's share, I won't go into all the detail, but the lion's share of this would go into the civil care operations and expansion. I'm struggling at the moment to remember what CARE acronym stands for. It'll come to me. The crisis care responders are social workers who are deployed through 911 calls. They're often better at handling calls than officers with guns. We're also expanding the 911 call center and making other changes, notably new drug treatment investments. I think I'm going to, in the interest of time, skip down to the next slide, please. What I'll say here is that our budget funded, the endorsed budget funded all of the sworn police officers that we expected to have in 25 and 26. We have had some good news from a public safety perspective. Our hiring has far outstripped that projection for both 25, and we've now updated our projection for 26. And we also are not losing officers to other police departments, to retirements, to whatever reason people would leave their job. That is great for public safety. We have almost 150 new officers that weren't anticipated in 25 and 26, but it does cost us more money. So we've had to put $39 million to pay for the cost of those new police officers. We can go to the next slide. I've only got two more after this. We're making some investments in the Pike Place Market and Seattle Center for removable vehicle barriers. There's a separate $1 million pot of money that we're investing in grocery store security, and then a range of investments that I think this group will care about to continue and expand the downtown activation. This is $4 million for SDOT to do street cleaning, pressure washing, alleyway cleaning. Another $4 million to expand the downtown activation team beyond the core area of downtown into Little Saigon, other parts of Pioneer Square, the CID, and also Lake City. Graffiti graffiti cleanup, and more park rangers are also funded. Um, Reducing homelessness, we continue our $225 million of investment citywide. This includes a new almost $8 million for 3 new homelessness shelters. We can go to the next slide. And then I mentioned the federal response. This is $28 million of the B&O tax proceeds, again, assuming the voters approve it in November. $4 million to support immigrant communities, $10 million in additional food investments. This includes food banks, about $6 million for food banks, $3 million for, I'm sorry, $6 million is for Fresh Bucks, which is a voucher program for people to buy fresh fruit and vegetables, and then some other money for food banks and hot meals access. There's $4 million for emergency rental assistance and $9 million to backfill threats of withheld funding from the federal government for shelter and emergency housing needs. That is my quick version, if you can believe it, of an overview of a $9 billion budget. Happy to answer any questions. I hope we have a few minutes to spend together.
Thank you, Dan. So let's see. We do have a couple minutes for questions. Let me pop over to the Q&A. So first, are we able to share these slides in a post-event email, or is there a place on the city website where they're available for folks to dig in a bit more?
Yeah, and for some reason, our systems didn't like each other. I saw at least one slide that didn't appear the way it was on mine. So yes, I can get you a link to the city council's website, which has the full deck
Okay.
for you to share. I'll email that to you.
Okay, great. So I will share that out in a post-event email. Another question here, does the Housing Reparations Fund benefit tribes or indigenous people as well?
No, it is expected to be focused on descendants of Black slaves. So it's specifically for Black people. I know that other folks have been um, the victims of redlining and other governmental actions which disenfranchise them. But this particular investment is intended to benefit descendants of Black slaves.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Dan before we move along with our program? I'll give it just a minute here. I see a raised hand. I'm not able to have you speak in a webinar, but if you want to type your question quickly. Oh, a question about the $600 million that is parked at the Office of Housing. How encumbered is that money?
Um, it, it is 100% encumbered. We have a we are the first money that goes into projects. So when we award, let's say, $20 million of a $100 million housing project, we are the first dollars in. Only if they get our money do they then begin design and permitting and approaching other funders to fill in the rest of the stack so that they can proceed with construction. It typically takes on the order of 5 years after we have awarded funding to finish the project and open the new housing. So what you see in a large amount of money, which is not spent in the Office of Housing, is for projects that were awarded 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 year ago that haven't yet used all of the money that the city has awarded.
Thank you. And I think there is one question left in the Q&A, and we have time for one more question, so that's perfect. This person was curious if you can share how the IT budget works. Is it centralized or allocated by program or priority?
Yeah, the IT budget is included as a chapter of the overall budget. It is cost allocated to the departments, so we have effectively internal rates where the departments pay for the services that they use, and some broad overhead, if you will, rates that they pay. So it's both and.
All right. Thank you very much, Dan. Um, we are going to move on with the rest of our program, but really appreciate your time this morning.
Thank you for the opportunity to be here.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. So, excuse me. Our next speaker this morning is Tyler Bichette with Pacific Public Affairs. He is a member of the Chamber's lobbyist team and is going to share with us the timeline for the city's budget process, opportunities for all of you to engage in advocacy around this, and what we can anticipate in the coming weeks. So, Tyler, let me get you going here and I'll share your slides. Just one moment.
Awesome. Thanks, Lee, and good morning, everyone. Excited to be here to talk about the budget. Yeah, you can just go ahead to the next slide. It'll be kind of short overview for me. I want to focus on basically the key timeline and dates that the Chamber policy team is tracking, and then also talk through some of the main ways that chamber members can get engaged in the process to advocate for your priorities, whether they be specific programs at the city or things in your neighborhood. So just want to kind of cover all of that. So at a high level, these are some of the key dates for the budget process. So as a reminder, the budget process this year is a midpoint update. So last fall, the council passed the biennial budget for 2025 and endorsed a budget for 2026. This fall, they will be making amendments to account for any, circumstantial changes, revenue changes, priority changes for that 2026 budget. So the mayor has already sent over his proposed budget, as Dan just covered. And the CBO and department presentations just wrapped up this week, which is basically when the executive branch staff go to council and present on their various budgets and what the key investments are that they're proposing. The first public hearing will be October 7th. There will be a remote and an in-person option. And then after that, it will become more of a council-driven process. So October 15th to 17th, central staff, so that is the policy staff for the council members, will go through and they will present on what the key policy considerations are for the council members following their analysis of what the mayor's team is proposing. On October 20th, there's another important update. That'll be the revenue forecast update. So if there are dramatic changes to the city's revenue picture for 2026, the council will then be tasked with sort of responding to the updated revenue forecast. So, for example, last year at the October revenue forecast, council found out that revenue was now forecasted to come in about $40 million lower than what the mayor's proposed budget was projecting. So they had to make up that difference and did so through some amendments, mostly by going and taking funds from a payroll expense tax rainy day fund. On October 21st, and initial council member proposals are due. If you want a city council member to, introduce an amendment, this is the deadline by which they need to put their proposals in front of central staff to get drafted. And then October 28th through the 30th, they will discuss those council member budget proposals in open public meetings. And you can go to the next slide, Lee. After that, another big date on November 5th, the chair's balancing package is released. So this fall, Dan Strauss is again the budget committee chair. This balancing package will have amendments from a number, probably all of his colleagues, and is generally it's an omnibus amendment package that will, contain things that I would generally characterize as non-controversial. On November 6th, there will be the second and final public hearing, again with a remote and in-person option. During this public hearing, it'll be good, or I would expect public comment to focus on what is in the balancing package, and other amendments that aren't in the balancing package, folks will be kind of advocating for or against those. So on November 7th, if you're a council member and you have some amendments that didn't make it into the balancing package, you have to tell staff whether or not you want to keep those amendments alive and bring them forward for an individual line amendment vote. Those will then occur on November 14th and 17th. So they'll vote on the big balancing package to amend the budget in various places. And then they will go through one by one and they will vote on line amendments. Um, and from there, after all of that, they'll have a budget that has been amended and they'll have the final committee vote on November 20th before having a special city council meeting for final action on the budget on November 21st. So yes, they'll all 9 of them are on the select budget committee. They'll vote it out of committee on November 20th. And then on the 21st, all 9 of them will vote again at a special full council meeting where they will, kind of make their remarks highlighting what they're proud of in the budget. Last thing I'll flag on this slide is they are going to vote before the election results are certified. So Councilmember Mark Solomon, who's currently representing District 2, who will work on the budget for the next 2 months, will be voting on it before whoever wins in November is sworn in to take over. You can go to the next slide. In terms of how to engage, there's kind of 3 big ways that I like to think of for members of the public to engage in the budget process. First, you can attend the public hearings that I previously mentioned. Those will be on October 7th and November 6th. On the 7th, focus on the areas you would want to see additional investment in, amendment concepts that you would like to see a council member bring forward. This is sort of, these early stages are the idea iteration phase where council members are trying to come up with the ideas of big picture, what are some amendments that we want to bring forward as part of this budget? On November 6th, like I said earlier, it will be more focused on what is in or is not in the balancing package, and kind of looking forward towards the remaining pieces on the table, which will be the standalone line amendments that council members might bring forward. You can write your council member and give them the idea for an amendment or investment that you would like to see either in your neighborhood or citywide. Um, if you're interested in doing this, I know that either myself or a member of the chamber policy team can help ensure you include the most appropriate staff to get the visibility that your request needs, or you can request a meeting with a council member. You can just reach out and say, hey, you're my council member, I'm your constituent. I want to talk to you about the budget, whether that be a virtual meeting, a meeting at City Hall, or a number of the district council members have sort of district day meetings in their districts where they'll just stack up 15-minute meetings with constituents and you can kind of go in and make your pitch for what you would like to see. And next slide, that might. Oh, and then in terms of what to expect. So, as I mentioned to those of you who were at RLC Seattle Day last week, the budget that the mayor has proposed for 2026 that is in front of council, it's balanced. The revenue forecast on October 20th could change that. But for now, there's not a whole lot that they have to do. So we still, though, are expecting, kind of a lot of amendments along the margins, generally, city council budget process, county council budget process. Council members always want to leave their mark on the budget. They want to make sure they're being responsive to district requests, whether that be kind of nuts and bolts stuff like a new crosswalk or some improvements at a park, or if there are specific policy priorities that a council member might have concerns about, or they want to see the city take a different direction. The budget process is a very key way to sort of go out and make those priorities a reality. And then just last comment, certainly the political climate could lend itself to larger scale amendment proposals from council. We'll see what happens. We haven't heard anything on that front, but it's certainly always something that could occur. And that's it for me.
Perfect. Thank you, Tyler. So now I'll introduce Lars Erickson, Senior VP of Public Affairs and Communications here at the Chamber. Lars is going to share how the Seattle Chamber is engaging in advocacy with the city during this budget cycle. So Lars, let me highlight you here for folks and you can get going.
Great. Thank you, Lee. And thank you, Tyler. Dan's left already, but I want to thank Dan as well for his time this morning. We will, if we have time, we'll take questions at the end as well. So I'm going to go through this pretty quick so we have some of that opportunity. And of course, we can follow up if we don't have time for your questions with, responding via email. So you're welcome to send me a note. And whether it's Tyler, myself, Sarah Clark, or Lily on our team, we can get back to you. But with that, I'm going to walk you through our latest version of the Demystifying the City Budget presentation. This is one of our advocacy tools to meet with policymakers. You've heard the basics from Dan giving information on the mayor's proposal, Tyler through the process. So this is how we're engaging and how we're having these discussions. We've already had 2 meetings with council members or staff and shared with them this basic outline. We're keeping things simple in 2025. Our message to lawmakers is pretty clear. We have 3 points to make. One, the local economy is fragile, and Seattle's unique business taxes are having unintended consequences throughout the city. 2, this year, do no harm. Be cool. Pass a balanced budget without raising taxes on the business community. And 3, in the long term, let's work together to ask and get answers to the tough questions. We're spending more, but our voters seeing results. So next slide. And very quickly, let's start by grounding ourselves in the city's economic and fiscal reality. Next slide. Seattle's budget has nearly doubled over the past decade, growing 81%, much faster than inflation or the consumer price index. And it's pretty straightforward. You saw that on Dan's chart as well. The next slide. This growth is supported by the increased tax burden on the business community during the same time frame. You'll see on the screen there are 5 taxes that have impacted the business community. 3 of them passed in 2015: the sweetened beverage tax, the transportation network company tax, and the short-term rental tax. The payroll expense tax passed in 2020, was increased in 2023. And then in 2025, just earlier this year, voters passed the social housing tax. I want to note that tax does not go into the overall budget. That goes into a separate fund, but it is a business tax and has been impacting the business community. So it's definitely germane to this discussion. I want to point out that the total percentage of the business community's tax burden has risen from 60% 3 years ago to 67% today. So taxes are policy choices, and every policy choice has a consequence, whether it's intended or not. And trade-offs are inevitable, but it's up to our elected officials to recognize that, mitigate it, and correct if needed. One of those glaring consequences is the impact to the city's office vacancy rate and how considerably much higher it is. Seattle business taxes influence where employers choose to operate and grow. As business taxes have grown, as the tax burden has grown, we've seen layoffs, closing of locations, moving of employees out of Seattle, or leaving the city altogether. By contrast, Bellevue and other suburbs are showing a stronger recovery with lower vacancy rates. You're seeing a little bit of an increase in Bellevue right now, but that doesn't compare to where we are in Seattle. Next slide. The increase is also impacting job growth. Since 2016, Seattle's year-over-year job growth percentage has slowed from 3.2% to just 0.1%. All of this while national job growth numbers over the same period are 10 times higher at 1.1%. And while some folks continue to point to tech losses in the tech sector, you can see by the data on the screen there that most of the job losses in the city come from construction, manufacturing, aerospace, and the financial activities sectors. When job growth and economic activity slows, so do our city revenues decline. And you're seeing, and that's impacting what the city can deliver. So I want you to consider some numbers from 2024. And we use 2024 because unlike 2025, the stock market, job growth, and wage growth were all relatively strong in 2024 and not impacted by tariffs or the national economic concerns that we're seeing right now. So last year we had a strong stock market growth. We had robust regional job and wage growth, and still the sales tax, driven largely by construction activity, was flat. The B&O tax in Seattle year over year was down, and the payroll expense tax was down from the expectations that had been set the year before. So these indicators tell us that economic activity is happening across our region, but less of it's happening in Seattle, even when the national numbers are strong. And you see a quote up there from Dan, and they acknowledge it themselves. They have publicly suggested that we are losing jobs to neighboring jurisdictions. They have noted the anomaly of revenues decreasing despite other economic indicators staying strong. And they've also acknowledged that when we lose jobs or shrink our tax base, the city's revenue becomes more volatile. And it impacts their ability to deliver services in the city. So now we're going into the conversations about this budget, and we're simply asking council members to focus on the 2026 problem in front of them, which means passing a balanced budget with no harmful taxes to the business community. So in addition to Seattle's business taxes and the challenges I've already highlighted, we need to remember that our state legislature just passed the largest tax package in state history, and Seattle voters will be considering the B&O tax that Dan referenced earlier on the ballot this November. So layering more city taxes on top of the state taxes that were passed will simply push more jobs out of Seattle, and the residents will bear the cost of that loss. So as policymakers are considering the 2026 budget situation, we're urging them to not make a bad situation even worse. So let's look at all the tools available to the city. And Dan talked about all three of these, but I want to make sure we spend a little bit of time on this. Two of these will be before voters. And at this point, we fully expect both proposals to pass. So the 81 million that you see on the screen is referencing the B&O tax adjustment proposal that is on the ballot. Again, we feel pretty confident that will pass. The chamber have not taken a position on this ballot initiative. Obviously, many of our members appreciate the exemption and the increase in the exemption. And many of our members also are being impacted by those higher B&O rates. And we, at this point, are not taking a position on the ballot proposal. There's also 50 million from the education levy, the FEP levy, that again, Dan mentioned, that 50 million supplants other dollars that would have funded programs through the general fund. And then the 39 million that the mayor proposed last week or 2 weeks ago now, sales tax on public safety initiatives. And Dan mentioned the outer year deficit, and one point I'd like to make is that does not consider these tools that are available. Obviously, they haven't passed by voters yet, two of them, but again, we fully expect them and expect that to have an impact again on the 27 budget. Going to the next slide. This year, council has an opportunity to break the cycle. And for the past few years, that cycle has looked like this. Higher business taxes lead to fewer jobs, lead to a narrower tax base, lead to volatile revenue, leading to poor policymaking, leading to manufactured deficits, and back to the higher business taxes. So this year, we are encouraging the council to break that cycle and focus on generating more sustainable revenue by encouraging economic activity in the city, bringing more jobs back into the city, and strengthening our tax base rather than continuing on this volatile cycle. And this is our last slide. Really, for us, it's about longer term. And really, after November 4th, we're going to know the landscape a little more clearly, or probably by the 8th, I would say, give or take, depending on what the electorate looks like. So, we're preparing to ask the tough questions, and a couple of you have already started doing that, and we're seeing this in presentations. There was a question just this, to Dan about the 600 million at OH. There we go, right? We're preparing to ask the questions about what results voters are seeing when they've seen increased investments across the board. How do we define encumbered? What does that mean? Dan talked about he gave a little bit of a description there, but up until the council briefing a couple weeks ago on the statement of legislative intent on Office of Housing, I'd never heard the 5 years was their landscape, right? They talked about money getting out the door in 2-year chunks, but now all of a sudden, because questions are being asked, they've extended that to 5 years. Well, 5 years on these programs right now, they have 40 projects that are more than 5 years or longer in this pipeline, that represent $2 billion of investments. Not all that's city, right? Again, it's proportional. But how long do we need to sit and wait for those projects? What is the delay? And the lack of transparency is very alarming. So pulling back the veil on some of these important questions is really what we're looking to do. And we'll be leaning into that a little bit more probably after the first week of November, to a higher degree. So with that, I know we're really close to being out of time, but if there are some questions Tyler or I could tackle, we are happy to do that or follow up as needed.
Perfect. Thank you, Lars, and thank you, Tyler. If you have questions for either of them, please put that in the Q&A box. I don't see any yet, but we'll give folks a minute.
And there was a question in the Q&A about meant for Dan about relocating homeless through some of the city funding. And obviously we do not, Tyler or I don't have an answer on that, so we need to follow up with Dan.
Thank you.
The city is investing in the Thunderbird Treatment Center in Vashon. So that's not it's not a homeless shelter, but they are investing in it's a substance use disorder treatment center. And because about 80% of the folks that are expected to be served there would be Seattle residents, the city is one of the funding partners for that.
Thank you. All right, one more minute. Any other questions?
I will just add on, Tyler talked about engaging with your council members. Again, we're happy to help facilitate that. And if you have questions about that, you can email myself, Sarah, Lily, or Tyler. We can, again, give you some advice on that. We will be sending out action alerts at some key moments over the next 3 weeks, really 8 weeks until it's all said and done. So you'll get some reminders on some moments when to do that. And, we'll be also sharing why this is an important moment to reach out. So you'll get a bit of that.
And Lars, how can folks sign up for those action alerts?
I knew you were going to ask that. This is where we can send a blast out after this so people can do a follow-up.
Okay.
Yeah. They can also email me, and I can have them plugged in. I think a lot of people on this call probably are already on our action alert list. That's probably why many of you got this invitation for this briefing through that list that we've created. So yeah.
Great.
But if you're not, please reach out. We'll also, like I said, blast out something to you all, everybody that registered for this call.
Perfect. All right, well, I don't see any other questions, so I think we can wrap up. Excuse me. So watch for that action alert. As Lars said, if you're interested in learning more, participating in advocacy, or have specific questions, you can contact anyone on the Chamber's policy team. I'll drop Sarah Clark, our Director of Policy. I'll drop her information in the chat now for everyone. And Lars, did you have another final thought?
Oh, I wanted to
Trying
thank
to
you,
say.
Lee.
Oh,
Thank you for facilitating today.
go on. All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining us. Again, watch for that post-event email, either from myself or someone on the policy team. In the next week, we'll have the way for you to sign up for action alerts and any resources from today. Thank you.
Thank you.